Guys, as you can see, I'm in a hotel room. I'm on the road. And I got to tell you, I've been using the internet a little bit more than usual lately, and I think you can relate. I must tell you, I want to make sure all of my data is protected, so I use NordVPN. I have been a customer of NordVPN long before they sponsored the show. Their encryption makes sure to protect your data, whether you're sending or receiving. All your personal information, your web browsing and history stays private. Guys, just for you, Nord has created a special cyber deal. Go to nordvpn.org/Sonnen. Use the promo code Sonnen. Sign up for a 2-year plan. They're going to give you 1 month free and a surprise gift. Again, go to nordvpn.org/Sonnen. Make sure to use the promo code Sonnen to get this special offer, or click the link in the description below. All right, I want to give you an official prediction for Felder versus RDA, but I want to drag it on. I don't want to just say Felder. I don't just want to say RDA. I want to drag it on. Look, going into all fights, there's always a story. And within that story, there's always a question. And it can be something as simple as, well, take last week, by example. You had Santos versus Glover, but you had a question of, is Santos in shape? He's been out for 500 days. By the way, had surgery, so we know he wasn't even training for 8 to 10 to 12 months. Is he in shape? It was just a question. Question ended up getting answered. Longer the fight went, a little bit harder it got. That's okay. I'm just proving the point that we have a question going into fights. Felder taking a fight on short notice, how is that going to affect him? Is it going to affect him? Now, when you start talking about that, you're really talking about one thing. Same thing that Santos was asked. Are you in shape? Paul Felder said, well, you know what? As a matter of fact, I prefer a 5-round fight. There was never a discussion on my side about shortening it to 3 rounds, which has been done. We have done, even in 2020, main events that are supposed to be 5 rounds, where somebody helps out on short notice and goes, look, man, I'll do the favor for you. Just make it 5. Make it 3 rounds, right? Don't make it 5. We've seen that on other levels as well. If you guys will remember at UFC 200, Anderson Silva got brought in on like 3 days' notice to take on Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier was the sitting champion of the world. This is when Daniel was supposed to fight John Jones, and John Jones pops, gets pulled from the fight. They fly Anderson, and he does this whole thing, weighs in at 205, does the paperwork, goes out and does the match, but he tells Dana ahead of time, he goes, man, I'll do this whole thing for you. I'm not fighting him for 25 minutes. On 3 days' notice, going up away, I'm not fighting him for 25 minutes. And Dana goes, well, but Anderson, he's the champ. I mean, the champ fights in 25 minutes fights. And Anderson will say that it's not a title fight. Dana goes, but it's Daniel. He's the champion. This is within his weight class. It has to be 5 rounds. If you beat him, Anderson, you don't become the champion. Anderson said, I'm 15 minutes. I'm stepping on a big grenade here, and I'll do the whole thing, but I'm not going to do it for 25 minutes. Now, I only bring that to you to prove that there's a history and there is a way to do it, and Felder didn't even ask for it. So I was on Errol and the Bad Guy today. I was talking to Helwani, and Helwani said the reason Felder accepted and is in such good shape is he's in training right now for a triathlon. I thought that was very telling. I mean, I thought that was a really interesting detail that only Ariel would have, and he did have it, and I feel that story needs to be told. That does change things. If Felder is in training for a triathlon, I don't know that we have to scratch our head and wonder, can he go 25 minutes? I would conclude the answer is yes. So now all of a sudden you're throwing out some of these intangibles, and you can just break this down on the X's and O's. Now you're going to have the old classic theory going into this, which is the striker of Felder versus the grappler of RDA. That is lazy, and that's not totally accurate. First off, Felder's grappling is not bad. Felder's wrestling defense is very good. RDA's hands are just fine. And I got to bring that to you as well. RDA can trade. He can punch and kick with the best of them. In fact, some of the bigger problems that RDA has ever had is getting taken down and not being able to get up. I mean, 3 losses that come to me off the top of my head for RDA. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Khabib Nurmagomedov. But that was all positional battles. Every one of those was a positional battle that ultimately got turned over to the judges, who ultimately had to enforce the 10-9 must system. If everything else is equal, but you lost position, you lost the round. You lose more rounds than the other guy, you lose the fight. That's what happens. So I'm just sharing with you, this isn't as simple as grappler versus striker at all. These are two mixed martial artists. Paul came from a striking background, and RDA came from a wrestling, a grappling, a jiu-jitsu background. That was 15 years ago. 15 years ago. These guys are MMA guys. Okay? Paul Felder is not safe the moment he's on his feet, and RDA is not safe if this fight goes to the... These guys are going to go fight. Period. This fight is very easy to see two different ways. One with a stoppage due to strikes. One of them catches the other one. It's also very easy to see 25 minutes of fun. Right? Now, I think that RDA is going to look to use that wrestling. I think RDA is going to look to trade just enough to get a hold of him and try to get Paul down. I'm just not willing to sign off on the idea that he's going to succeed. Paul's got very good hips. Paul understands wrestling very well. All of Duke Rufus's guys do, but they only get credited as strikers. I mean, even Anthony Pettis himself, if you go back and look at Pettis' record, you will be stunned to find how many submissions he has. You have likely forgot the night he became the champion of the world. He did that with an armbar from his back. One of Rufus's guys. I only offer that to you because Rufus, who himself was a kickboxer, as an MMA, he coaches MMA. He himself was a kickboxer. He coaches MMA. That always gets lost on the Rufus guys, and I think that it's getting lost on Paul Felder a little bit. And the same as I can tell you how good Paul is on the ground, or moreover, he's even better at avoiding going to the ground than he is once he gets there. Man, I got to tell you, RDA can do some work on his feet. RDA just does the basics very well. He will march you down, he will bury his chin, and he will start throwing hands, and he's a pretty damn powerful guy. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't have to be dynamic like Demetrius Johnson, and you don't have to be tricky like Izzy Adesanya. If you can get this to the target, you've done everything you need to do. RDA does that. If I was to give you an official pick, I feel that they were both up against the same thing. I realize that Felder is getting the shine right now for stepping in on short notice, but everything that Felder is doing, RDA is doing. Possibly to a lesser extent in that RDA was planning on this date. That would be the only thing you could add in RDA's category. Felder stepped in to fight RDA having no idea he was going to fight RDA. RDA said, I'll fight Felder. RDA didn't have 5 more minutes to think about that than Felder did. They're both coming into it, but there is one guy who's going to have more, even though they're both doing the same thing. They both accepted a fight against an opponent they didn't know they were going to have on extremely short notice. The perception, though, is that Felder is the one taking the risk. Felder is the one who is up against it. Perception being reality means the pressure's on RDA. Like it or not, fair or not, that's the case. And I think that's a very real thing because I think Felder's going to go out there and be a little bit more playful. One thing in fighting that comes in very, very handy isn't to be careless, but it is to care less. If you can care less than your opponent, you have the power. In any relationship, it could be a romantic one. If the other person cares less about it than you do, they got the power. It could be a business relationship. The other guy cares less if this deal gets done than you do, he's got the power. And I think that Paul Felder going into this with perception being reality and being able to be not careless, but to care less is going to be helpful. I've never in my life predicted a fight based on who is going to care less about it, but I am right now, and I'm doing it because if an athlete can ever be playful, he can ever go out there and just loosen up, let his training take over. That's always the plan. It's always what you'll say to the media. That's what you're trying to convince yourself of, but athletes will also tell you it just simply doesn't work that way. That's what I tried to do, but I don't quite get all the way there. But when they do, something special happens. My prediction, Paul Felder.